14th of May 2023. After a comfortable night at Kalahari Anib and breakfast at the restaurant, we headed off to our next destination, which was the Quivertree Forest just out of Quivertree. The trip is a bit over 300 kilometres with the route we took. I noticed on the map that we would pass a feature called the Finger of God, which looked interesting, so I penciled in to do the detour to have a look. The trip quickly took us out of the Kalahari and into the scrublands further to the west. This is more gently undulating country without the dramatic mountains that you get further west. It reminds me a lot of our home state of Western Australia. There's the occasional range off in the distance, but otherwise not very photogenic. Eventually we come to the escarpment where the Finger of God, the Mukarob, is supposed to be. The escarpment is not huge, but it's very rugged, so I took a shot with the mighty Hilux. Eventually we found this isolated prominence, which I suppose was the Finger of God or what was left of it. It was very soft and crumbly rock with a lot of large scattered fragments around the lower slopes. Turns out that was it. When I got an internet connection later in the day, it seems that until the 8th of December 1988 it was taller and complete and looked like this. But the top fell on that day and all that remains is this base. I don't think my map had updated data. It wasn't the last time the map, which I bought in Western Australia, would let us down. We had a quick lunch while we were there and headed off to join the main road, the B1, to head down to Quivertree so we could get an early check-in and set up camp. That turned out to be a mistake. There were extensive roadworks, and it turns out that the locals don't seem to mind much about speed limits in roadworks, and the South African registered vehicles don't care at all. Just decided to forego the scenic route because it might take too long, and now we're stuck in roadworks on the main road. You just cannot win, can you? We turned off just before the town and headed out to the Quivertree Forest rest camp. This turns out to be a camping area set up by a local farmer on his property. The camping area was right next to the forest, and while basic, it was neat and clean. I care more about cleanliness in these places than 5-star facilities, and this was clean and well maintained, and I think only one other vehicle there. We had a braai, a barbecue, and a table under the tree, plus running water. No, you couldn't move the table when the shade moved. The quiver trees, known as kokerboom in Afrikaans or Choje to the sand people, yes I know, I just mangled those two names, are very unusual. I think they're akin to aloes and are larger than I imagined. The forest is a forest by Namibian standards, consisting of a few hundred trees growing on a rocky hill. The place is a stark beauty and is worth a lot if you're in the area. There are rock hyrax here. I think they share Sasquatch genetics because they're all blurry. Some of the trees had flower buds, but the flowers were not open yet. These are medium-sized specimens. I mean the trees. I think there are so many here because the seeds lodge in the rocks. When we checked in, we'd been invited to walk back to the farmhouse as the farmer had a couple of orphan cheetahs he'd raised. We didn't see them at check-in as they were out in the 40-acre run he'd built for them, but he said he'd call them in to be fed. On the way we came across ground squirrel burrows with the inhabitants busy foraging and digging. Probably not very interesting to most people, but they were to us as we have no squirrels in Australia. There was more of the heavy-duty furniture at the farmhouse. Check out the cushions on the seats. We sat and waited, and after a while the cheetahs came into their inner holding pen to be fed. Yes, I know it says no photos, but the owner gave us permission for photos and videos. These are beautiful animals and seem contented where they are. They evidently can't be released into the wild because they don't have the running speed or the skills to hunt. That is one loud purr. Oh God. The weaver birds enjoy the cheetah's water dish. After some time with the cheetahs, we went back to the camp and explored the maze. Angela says I cheated, but me, never. They just needed bigger rocks. Some of the other local wildlife was out catching some late afternoon rays. Unlike the Sasquatch hyrax, these were not blurry at all. In the fading light, the quiver trees take on an unworldly appearance. I wanted to get some pictures with the quiver trees against the stars. I only have a mini tripod and no tracker, so I just have to do the best I can. Focusing is quite difficult. If you just set the focus to infinity, the stars come out blurry. Naturally, you can see the Southern Cross and the pointers from here. If you turn up the gain, you can see the large Magellanic Cloud as well, but the picture has a lot of digital noise and satellites. Eventually I slink back to the camp. I'm only 200 metres away amongst the trees, but the sounds in the night are creeping me out. The farmer said there are no leopards here, but how does he actually know? One last look at the Southern Cross, and it's up the ladder to Betty Buys. 15th of May 2023. Today we're having a slight detour to a place called the Giant's Playground, which is not far away from the Quivertree Forest, and then we're off to the Fish River Canyon, where we'll be camping for a couple of nights. We also have to call into Keepmansip as we awoke to a flat tyre on the car. I checked it carefully and there seems to be no puncture, so I'll get the valve replaced and see how we go. The Giant's Playground is a massive jumble of rocks that looks like giant children have been at play stacking them and knocking them over. The individual rocks look huge, but they aren't really. If you get your angles right, you can make people look like giants, supposedly. How did I do with this shot? No? What about this one? These rock piles remind me of the hills around Karratha in Western Australia, where you see a similar phenomenon. The D608 road through the hills to the east of the main road looked tempting, and it turned out to be very scenic and busy for the driver. I didn't have enough hands to do any video as the road was very up and down and needed my full attention. It would be easy to get air or run off the road if you started to enjoy yourself too much. I recommend a drive if you're in that area. Rather than go west then south to the Fish River Roadhouse, I decided to go south then west, as our map showed a shortcut that way that looked more interesting. We couldn't find it. In the end we drove right down through Cannabis, don't get excited, that's just the name of the place, to the main road, then west, then north back up to the Roadhouse. Added some 50 kilometres to the trip, but we didn't care, it was beautiful. We'd booked a couple of nights camping at the Fish River Roadhouse. There are lodges on the western side of the canyon, but we decided to try the Roadhouse as it is something of an icon and we could camp but not have to cook. What's this about a canyon? The Fish River has carved the deepest canyon in Africa, and it also rates as the second largest canyon in the world, whatever that means. It's 161 kilometres long, 27 kilometres wide and 550 metres deep. In short, it's big. More on the canyon later. Excuse me puffing a bit, I've just climbed up this hill. This is the Fish River Canyon campsite in Namibia. It's our camp just there. Got here with a bit of a detour, but we got here. It's quite nice. Gonna self-cater tonight and then indulge at the cafe tomorrow and on the Wednesday before we go. Around to the roadhouse to check in. I'll show you what it's like inside later. You also get the occasional quivertree in this area, but no forest. We set up camp in our spot under a big shady tree. This is desert country with very few trees and the location was welcome. Time for a cup of tea. It's always time for a cup of tea. The birds are not shy. They will come and sit on your car, table, foot, whatever, to see what they can score. That night I saw what I thought was a skunk in our camp. Turns out it was an African polecat or zorilla. So I saw both gorillas and a zorilla on this trip. Sorry, no photos. It just whooshed through and was gone. As the sun set, I cooked up some dinner. Then it was up the ladder to bed again with the stars turning on their usual show. Next morning dawned bright and sunny again. Come on, this is Namibia. You get to expect this. We drove the 20 kilometres or so over to the canyon viewpoints. This is Fish River Canyon. Probably doesn't show up on the camera, but yeah, it's deep. It's pretty big. Due to the fact that it's got sort of two steps to it, the depth is measured from those hills over in the background there. So it's got that top sort of step and then this second one, and that's the Fish River down there. And on that rocky point over there is the lookout. We'll go over there and have a look. Even though this is one of the main tourist attractions in Namibia, and this is the touristy side, there were not many people here. We found it hard to judge the scale of the place. It's certainly big. These pictures of the second viewpoint I took from the main viewpoint sort of show it. Rather than to try and comment on the whole experience, here is a montage of images to give the impression of what it's like there. That evening we went to dinner at the Roadhouse restaurant, a short walk through the dark and across the dry creek from our camp. The food was excellent and the sign about the Roadhouse burgers is no mere boast. The whole site is a great collection of old cars and motorcycles, a reminder of how people got around in these areas before people thought you needed a four-wheel drive to tackle any road or track with bumps in it. After dinner, back to the car and bed under the stars. Tomorrow we're off to Aus via the Orange River and the border with South Africa. We'll take a break from camping with some surprise accommodation. That's for the next video.